All right, Nick, let's talk about the Atlanta Falcons who are going to make some big moves. No, not in the draft quite yet, not in free agency, in the front office. And we have the story about this one. I think this is going to be big, and I think the Falcons fans are going to want to listen in because this could affect the franchise in a huge way this coming season. But Falcons fans, coming off a season, bit of a rebuild season, but I think if you take a peek at the team, there are a lot of bright spots. Desmond Ridder played fairly well in his last game. I think there's a lot to look forward to, but we want to know, before we look forward, let's look back a bit and tell us what was your favorite moment from this past season? What was your favorite moment from the Falcons this past season? Let us know in the comments below. But Nick, what is this move that the Falcons are making that's going to be huge?
Yeah, so we talked about it during the season that this year for Atlanta was going to be tough because of the dead salary cap hit. And just obviously, you had guys like Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, their contracts were still on the books. And everything was set up for 2023 offseason and preparing for that offseason. It looks like the Atlanta Falcons are preparing to make none other than just the biggest haul they've ever gone after. And you can kind of see the move before the move with this latest story from ESPN. So I'm going to read you from the report here. The Atlanta Falcons are shifting the top of their leadership structure, dividing their football and business heads into two separate jobs. Rich McKay, who has been the president and chief executive officer of the Falcons since 2011, will remain as CEO and be in charge of the football operations of the team, but is handing off the business side of operations to the franchise's new team president, Greg Beatles. Now, Miles, I'm sure a lot of people, when they saw that story, if they even heard that story at all, they kind of thought it was a throwaway. Like, how is that a big deal? What does that matter? The reality is Rich McKay is an NFL vet, right? He's been around the block a bunch, but the last few years, he's been in charge of both football and business operations, right? That's a lot to handle. It's a lot to take care of. By handing off the business to Beatles and focusing only on football, it's clear to me that the Atlanta Falcons are preparing to make big moves and big deals, as soon as they possibly can, right? They've got the cap space. They got $69 million in cap space. That's the second most in the NFL. And Rich McKay, pushing off the business side, focusing on football, tells me they're preparing to use a whole heck of a lot of it once free agency starts. Miles, give me your thoughts on the Falcons and this move and what they're going to look forward to come March.
Yeah, Nick. So, looking at forward for the Falcons, I think they can make a lot of pretty big moves that are going to end up paying off for them. And I kind of want to scan over the team really quick and give some nods to some positional upgrades so the Falcons fans can look forward to in the coming free agency and draft period, and that their new executive is going to look over. So I think the Falcons are pretty good offensive line wise. I think they're looking really good. I think Desmond Ridder, I think is worth rolling the dice on this next season, especially even though it may be a Tampa Bay team that was resting some players. He played very well. 224 yards, 2 touchdowns. He hasn't thrown any picks this season. So, I think he's played very admirably in that aspect. I think they could upgrade their second and third receivers a little bit more and make them a little bit elite. Obviously, Drake London's great. Kyle Pitts is great. The running game is actually surprisingly pretty defense. But where they need to focus the most, Nick, is on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, they could have secondary help. I think a lockdown corner would be great. A little bit of help for Jarrett on the defensive line would be good. And maybe a peek at the linebacking core as well. I think these are all some key additions that the Falcons could make that really make them step up. And I could see a Seattle Seahawk or a Detroit Lion type jump from, not such a great season to being bona fide playoff contender for the Falcons if they just upgrade a few key positions. What do you think about this, Nick?
Yeah, I agree with your assessment there, Miles, but I'll give you one better. How about a Jacksonville Jaguars offseason, right? People forget Jacksonville in the offseason made all kinds of big moves last year, bringing in a bunch of weapons, bringing in some offensive linemen, bringing some defensive players as well. They completely overhauled their roster, and they went from a terrible football team in 2021, to winning the AFC South this past year in 2022 and going to the playoffs. And I think the Falcons are looking at that Jacksonville model and looking at the cap space they're going to have this offseason. And you brought up all of those positions and potential areas that could add players. Because of the cap space they have, minus, they could literally get someone, a quality player or multiple quality players at each one of those position groups. The door is wide open for the Falcons, and they have a golden opportunity in front of them. And that's why Rich McKay is 100% focused on that. He doesn't want the business side to distract him from making big deal after big deal this offseason.
And I think if the Falcons kind of focus on the NFC South going forward, as you said, Jaguars won AFC South. Tampa, does Brady stay if Brady moves away? Tampa is a very vulnerable position. The Carolina Panthers, they don't have a head coach yet. They don't really have a quarterback yet, so they're also a little shaky. And same with the New Orleans Saints. So I think the Falcons are leaps and bounds ahead of these other teams in the NFC South. If they can get the right key additions to this team, I think, like you alluded to, they're in a pretty prime position to win the NFC South next year.